Okay, class, we are now in our last topic, which is emphasis. This is the part of the class where we're going to try and bring everything together that we've learned thus so far. This, um, this, this principle uses the other principle of balance, and they're kind of, interrelated. When we did balance and we talked about symmetry, asymmetry, radial, and crystallographic layouts or formats, those type of techniques or principles are, they're integrated with emphasis or focal point. And, what exactly is a focal point? It's an area that has a lot of visual weight. You can also say you can also say it's an area that has a lot of attention grabbing capabilities. One of the most obvious ones that you have is if you put it straight in the middle, like a bullseye. Anything right in the middle is very quick. You know it's important, but you run the risk of it being a bit boring or too quick of a read, you know? So, let's go ahead and we're going to take a look at some examples and talk a little bit about emphasis and think about what kind of layouts can use to enhance the focal points. So let's go ahead and start with our little comic strip here, right? So it says here, again, I know they're always picking on little old ladies that go to the museum. But here we have like, oh, look, I think I see a little bunny. Now, the joke here is that this is an exhibition. You can see it's probably, late 40s. We're not in the 50s yet, and it's they kind of look like William Kandinsky paintings. And this is the beginnings of non-objectivity. We already had surrealism, and so this is the part where art is just trying to be about art and not trying to be about anything else. And so the joke is that when somebody sees a thing like a little ducky or a little bunny or a person, and the artist or the designer has worked so hard to try and not make it look like anything, it could drive an artist crazy. You're like, oh my God, now I see it too, or all this stuff. So that's kind of the joke. The other thing that's not really a joke, and it's kind of a comment on, human nature, is that we're always trying to find something. We're always trying to find, what can I see? What is there that I know? Because it's very hard for us to accept nothingness. We always are trying to find something in nothing. Any hoot. Let's go on. Okay, so emphasis. Bam! What do we have here? It's straight in the middle. No doubt, this is about a slice of orange. And this thing is using this thing is using two forms of emphasis. The first one, which is the most predominant form, is its location. It's called emphasis via placement. This thing is placed where? Smack dab in the middle. Smack dab in the middle. The next, maybe like a lower tier of emphasis that it's using, is color. Everything seems to be monochromatic all around it, and yet here's this vibrant orange thing in the middle. So that is contrast. Contrast, remember, means difference. Contrast does not mean black and white. It means difference. It could be smooth, rough, dry, wet, transparent, opaque. These are forms of contrast. So in this instance, we're using color as contrast. So a focal point, the point of emphasis in an image or design. You can use more than one focal point. You can have a 1, 2, 3. You can have like, grand opening, Joe's Pizza, tomorrow on the corner of 35th and 6th Street or whatever. So, this is how you choreograph messaging in your design. It's through emphasis, and it's through different degrees of carrying through the message, like 1, 2, 3. Now, it does sound a little bit complex or complicated. A lot of times for designers, it kind of comes natural, but it's no different than somebody who is studying literature or grammar or what have you, the language arts, and they're writing an essay. Everybody knows the principles of writing an essay and the paragraph, introduction, body, conclusion. Well, in design, we do the same kind of thing, but with emphasis, having various focal points. Do you have to have more than one focal point? No. But you got to be careful, because if you have too many focal points, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it's too much. And then the viewer just feels like, okay, what was that about? Ever see a commercial where you're like, you thought it was about sneakers, but it ended up being about perfume, and you're like, okay, all right, if you say so. That's what you want to avoid as a designer. So, here we have where you can have more than one focal point. Let's look at Henri Matisse's painting here. He always does some strange paintings. Towards the end of his life, he did some very nice collage paper cutouts. But somewhere in the middle, he did some strange ones. But here we have 3 figures and a turtle. And you almost don't know it, but the main focus here is the turtle. That's number 1. But when you look at number 2, which would be this woman here, who's, she's located in the center. That's a form of placement. And we have this turtle, which is, there are no other turtles. It's the only turtle. That is a form of contrast. It's different. It's also a form of isolation. It's by itself. So we have number 1, number 2, and then maybe between the blonde woman is like maybe number 3, and then number 4 right here. Notice some of the things we've already studied, such as the psychic line. Here's a good psychic line. It's totally looking straight at the turtle. Here's a nice implied or actual line that's going towards the turtle. Again, these feet right here, psychic line, pointing at the turtle, pointing at the hand that then points back at the turtle. So we are constantly having, a circular eye movement, small circle, large circle. So there's constant eye movement, and everything. If you look at her curve of the body here and her curve over here, it kind of hugs your vision, the stage of where the dance of your eyes is taking place. We have 4 different kinds of emphasis. The 4th one is not listed. It's basically emphasis on the whole. That's where you have something that is so scattered, like confetti, so evenly scattered that there is no one heavy area. You don't have asymmetry. You have crystallographic layout or format. That could be a pattern as well that extends beyond the picture plane. So those are forms of emphasis on the whole. The other ones that are more commonly used for like advertisement or what have you is contrast, isolation, and placement. Here we have a photograph. What seems to stand out right away, immediately? This large, lonely tree in the middle. It's smack dab in the middle. This is placement. Ways to achieve emphasis. Again, we have isolation, change the direction, the element, the size, the color, the brightness. These are different ways to use emphasis, thinking about contrast, for instance. So, emphasis on contrast. How's that achieved? One element that is the opposite of everything else, pretty much. Kinda, I mean, The main point here in this picture is not the trees. It's not the trees, it's not the grass, it's that zebra. That zebra stands out for two reasons. One, the environment or the context. Zebras don't hang out in the forest where Robin Hood is hiding out. And look at the forest. It's kind of greenish, lush. And here we have this monochromatic, striped, graphic zebra. So that's a form of contrast. Two types of contrast. One, environment or context, and the other one, color. I like this piece. It's very odd. Now in this one, I mean, the power of the mind, right? We recognize, even though it's filled with faces, very quickly you can recognize which one is the real human face. So this is another way of, in a very subtle way of illustrating contrast. This, I kind of feel it's more placement. This is placement, right? Apparently the guy with the number 16 jersey, he helped win the game. And everybody's pretty much pointing at him, and he's on people's shoulders. So putting somebody on your shoulder or on a pedestal is placement. Also, everybody kind of pointing at that person, that is placement. Looking at the person, placement. You increase that focal point, that emphasis. Isolation. Take the repetition of the same object over and over again and have it just one of these off by its side. Keep in mind, for the projects or the assignments that you're going to be doing for this lecture here, you may want to refer to some of these slides to help you think about how to create a project with, for instance, isolation, right? So just keep this in mind. So let's look at this piece. This piece is amazing, this painting. It's amazing for the different kinds of isolation, different kinds of emphasis that it's using. The main thing first, focal point number one is the professor, right here. This is a classroom back in the days. This is the professor. He's all to the side. He's important. He's not getting his hands dirty. No way. But he's talking about the whole procedure. I guess this is like maybe an anatomy class or a medicine class of some sort. So he's talking the whole procedure there. He's off to the side. There's a spotlight on him. Nobody's really looking at him. Everybody's kind of looking at the operation, but they're listening to him. He's important. This is a form of isolation. Now, how about contrast? Number two is this woman, oddly enough. Here she is. She's the only woman. There is another woman. She's on the operating table, but she's the one right here, and she's very stoic, cold-faced. She's kind of like contrast, emphasis via contrast. Then the third thing is the cadaver, the woman right in here being operated or what have you, dissected. And she is placement. Now look at how amazing this is. Look at the banister right here. Where is it going? Keep following it, and it goes, even with his fingers, bam, right there to the center of her chest. Everybody else, all their eyes, a lot of psychic lines coming right into here. A lot of them. Maybe not him. He's probably looking at the professor. But everybody is looking at this area. So what do we have? 1, 2, and 3. We have isolation, number 1, contrast, number 2, and the cadaver, the actual, what this piece is about, number 3. Amazing piece, right? Amazing. Isolation. This is like an entry to an exhibition, or it says here, call for entries, and that could be you, and it's isolated down here. Your best show, right down there. That's a nice quick advertisement. This is design. This is design. So placement. When all the lines point or cross as an axis, perspective line, radial design, what have you, the focal point will be that point. So radial, radial balance has a very strong focal point. Wherever that radial or that spiral is, that is going to be a focal point, and that is placement. Such as this. This is radial, and it's all about this square right here in the middle. Or, this is a nice installation where you have all these tools emanating from a center point right in here. And we have Adam and Eve. What do you think is number one here? I mean, look at it. Where is it placed? It's the apple. It is in Adam's hand, and Eve is Eve's hand, right? And it's right in the center of the composition, and they're holding it, and they're looking at it. Psychic lines is a form of placement. Fingers pointing, holding it, location, those are all forms of, or techniques of placement to convey that message. Perspective. So, here we have Vermeer's painting, right? And this is about a girl, and she's taking her piano lessons. This is one of those old pianos, harpsichord or something like that. I forgot what it's called. But it's very subtle, but you don't know it. But all these perspectival lines, right? This is 1 point perspective. All these lines, where are they going? Right there. They're all going. You can get the ruler, and it goes, boom. The edge of this table, right there. He's looking at her. This is number one. Number two is her reflection. And then number three, look at her nose. Who's she pointing at? The instructor. So we got 1, 2, 3. So we have this nice little triangle right in here. Again, back then there was no graphic designer or anything like that. It was visual arts. It was painters and artists and sculptors, but they were the designers. And there was an extreme sense of intelligence back then in choreographing and controlling the viewer. All right, let's move on. Try not to use. So, thoughts on where to place the focal point. Now, look, these are techniques, but sometimes these techniques have been used so many times that it just gets played out. So, try not to use the dead center of the picture. It's called the dead center for a reason. Yes, it is, because it's too quick. It's too quick. Try not to, to put a focal point too close to the edge of the picture. It's true. If you have important stuff and it's on the edge of the paper, sometimes the viewer will look at it and then whoop, leave the whole platform. So if you had a 1, 2, 3 and you put the 1 in an area where they go 1, Joe's Pizza, and then they're off. They don't even get to know where it's located or if there's a grand opening, so you got to be careful with that. And have something like a gaze or direction to point back into the composition. In other words, create eye movement. Your job is to try to keep the viewer locked in for as long as you can for advertisement, okay? Or design, or painting. Let's see. So I'm just going to skip a few of these things. Emphasis on the whole over the parts, right? This is where we think about how can we evenly scatter things around so we look at everything. So this is like a faux map, but when you really start looking at it, your eyes are going everywhere. There's no one area more important than the other. Here's a nice Jasper Johns painting where it's a bunch of numbers that have been painted over and over and over and over again. They're stencils, but there is no one area more important than the rest. What's important in this painting? The whole painting. So Jackson Pollock was good at this. At times, Jackson Pollock, he would have areas, or it would be like asymmetry, but most of his successful pieces have a nice all-over composition. So crystallographic balance is emphasis of the whole. What are you emphasizing here? Why would an artist even do this? Well, for Jackson Pollock, he's emphasizing the sense of sublime, or the size, or the composition, or how sometimes some artists want to, suggest, how some things are larger than you. That can become something what is known as awe, or sublime, or subliminal. This is crystallographic. Quilts, patterns. It could be just a simple pattern. That's also emphasis on the whole. Here we have an installation, right? And this artist is Stacy. Okay, I'm not going to bother pronouncing that. Kalmanovsky. Sorry, but this artist, it's an installation, and it's an installation trying to emphasize a space, a big square space in the highlights and in the skylight. So what is she doing? She's exhibiting drops, glass drops. They would kind of emulate raindrops. So this is an emphasis of the whole. And at the end here we have some small examples of, like, what do you think this might be? This would be contrast, right? This is a small dot. It's black. This dot, this circle has thick stripes. This one is large and it's thin outline. This guy, thick outline. Everybody else is thin. These are all nice examples of contrast. What about here? Immediately, you should figure out that it's about that red circle. But why? Why are you looking at that red circle before anything else? I think the next thing I look at is the color blue. This little blue section right up here. So I look at the circle first because there's nothing round and geometric. There is curves. There are curves all around here, but this is a geometric shape. After this, it's this color blue, number 2. This is also contrast. Yes, there's some warm colors, but this blue is pretty bright, All right. How about this? Yeah. The emphasis is right here. Right here, right? Head being cut off right there. Look at how strong this is. Look at all of these actual lines. This is placement, everybody. Psychic lines pointing down. It's an amazing painting. And contrast. I mean, come on. This is Henri Rousseau, and he would do surrealist paintings based on some of the French military men during World War II, when they'd come back from Africa. They would have all these crazy stories, and he would take all these stories from these French military men, and then he would just kind of reenact them in paintings. So either way, it is surrealism, and this woman does stand out. She's on a couch, nude, in the middle of this jungle. And so she becomes number 1, and then, in a very hidden way, number 2. This woman here playing the flute with the tiger that's like number 3 looking right back at you. All right, everybody. This concludes our PowerPoint, and it's amazing emphasis. I'm telling you, this is, if you can get down emphasis and really understand it, you really have a powerful way of, it's like the grammar of design. It's the structure. It's how you deliver that message effectively. Okay, everybody. Have fun, and talk to you soon. Ciao.